In Part 2B of the lab, we learned how to download TigerLine data from the U.S. Census Bureau. In Part C, what we're going to learn how to do is download additional attribute data to join to that shapefile. The idea here is when we download a shapefile, you're basically downloading an empty container. You can put any data you want into those census tracts, provided you have the information aggregated by census tract. In other words, if you can find data on whatever topic you like, aggregated by census tract, you can add it to that shapefile. You can then map it. So in this case, we're going to take a look at how to download a basic data table, join it to a census tract, the merged census tract shapefile that we've created, and then visualize the data that we download and join. This all starts by learning how to navigate the Census Bureau website, which can be a bear. The easiest way through, I think the consensus is, by going to data.census.gov and then clicking on Advanced Search. Once you're at the Advanced Search, you can take a certain order to things, which will save you a lot of time. In the lab, it suggests that you enter P3. This is a particular data table at the Census Bureau that we're downloading on various racial measures. Now what we're going to tell the search engine here is before we download it, we want to limit what we're looking at to a specific geography. In this case, we want to download the data table that we're downloading for all of the tracts in the three areas that we're working with: Baltimore County, Baltimore City, and Howard County, all at the same time. So I'm going to click on Geography here and go to Tract. That's the geography we're interested in. And we want to get all of the census tracts in the state of Maryland for, in this case, Baltimore County, and then say all tracts within Baltimore County. Now when I click that, you'll see that shows up in a filter. So if I go back here and say, let's get Baltimore City as well, that also shows up in the filter. And I'll click and say, let's get Howard County as well, all the tracts, and you see we now have all of those geographies contained in the search that we're doing. So now when I say search, it tells me I can download a 2010 data table on race limited to census tracts within those three counties. So when I click on that table, I'll see, among other things, at the top of this that this is the table that I'm looking at, and it shows me that I'm downloading table ID P3. That is this table that tells me the total population of each tract, the white population of each tract, the black or African American population of each tract, and so on. I'll then click here and say download. I'm going to click the table I want, which is that first table in the list, and say download selected. Now it's going to give me some options. I'm just going to make sure that it's downloading the 2020 census. It's the file I'm downloading is called a CSV. That's a generic data format called a comma-separated value. It's just a bunch of numbers separated by columns, and then there are row breaks that show us all 469 counties, tracts in the three counties that we're working with. And when I click download, it says it's preparing the data, then download now. I'll save this to a safe location to work with. I would recommend you're saving it to your Lab 2 folder. Now what we get from this is a zipped file. It'll take a second to download, and when it opens, you'll see there are several files within it. And the main file that we're going to work with is this one called Data with Overlays. That's the data table itself. We also get metadata. If you open that up, it'll show you a list of the columns that are in the data table with overlays. The other table is a standard table that is basically credits for the file from the Census Bureau. It will ship with any file you download from the Census Bureau. So the one you want to pay attention to is this one with overlays. So extract all of those files, and eventually you'll have the file that you're interested in this case, this one, ready to be opened in Excel. So I'm just going to tell it, open that with Excel. The file looks like this. I think it's a good idea to spread it out a little bit so you can examine its properties, and I'm going to just point out a few things about it. First, the idea here is we can join data to a shapefile if there's a common field that's often called a key field, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that works theoretically in my presentation. But here, to demonstrate, what I want to point out is that within this field called GeoID, there's this big long string of digits that culminates in this 11-digit number that starts 24, and in this case 005, and then 6 more digits. That's a standard numerical style for a census tract identifier. So the first 2 digits, 24, are Maryland, 005 is Baltimore County, and the next 6 digits are the census tract. There are like 215 of those in Baltimore County. And so if we look at the census tracts, the attribute table for the census tracts, ultimately we want to take that data table that we just downloaded and join them so that there's a one-to-one correspondence between those rows and these, and we'll get that population data joined to part of this tracts shapefile. But we don't have that big identifier number, that GeoID field, not exactly like it is in the Census Bureau, but we do have this field called CTIDFPOO, which is an 11-digit. It looks like a number, but if we actually let our mouse hover over here, it's an 11-digit text field. These are being read as though they are words. You can think of this as being the name of the census tract, each of those 459 census tracts. So ultimately what we want to do with this Excel file is just get the last 11 digits of this field and use that to join our data to the shapefile. Now what you'll see is in the lab instructions, there are several steps that we end up taking with this file to prepare it. So for example, one step in this lab is to get rid of one of these 2 header rows. These data tables from the census ship with codes for the columns and then the names of the columns also. We just want one of those 2 fields, and we'll stick with the first one. So we're going to, or I think we delete one of those 2 fields in the instructions. The other thing you'll notice is this field right here is the total population of each tract, but in some cases it's been updated. And so if you scroll through here, you'll see several instances when the numbers get weird, and we're going to do an operation that will separate out everything to the right of that parenthesis and just keep the data that we want. We'll do a few other things, a few other steps cleaning up this data. I'm not going to replicate all of them, but once you're done, you have a data table that you can then bring into ARC. That data table looks like this. So the differences you can kind of observe if you switch back and forth. So you can see here I've inserted a new GeoID field, and you'll do the same, called GeoID2, and it's just the last 11 digits of that original number. We've cleaned up the total population, and we've deleted one of those header rows. So we just have a single row telling us what each of those fields is. It still uses these codes, which are Census Bureau codes for different values. P0303001 is the total population of each tract. Now what I want to do is take this GeoID field and join it to that tract shapefile. But nothing's ever that simple. This is a CSV file, so ARC can read it, but it can't make any modifications to it. It can't make any changes to it. Unfortunately, if I right-click or if I just hover my mouse over GeoID2, it tells me that this field is a double. That means it's a numeric field. We're going to talk more about field types in ARC, but it's very archaic, and basically the field I want to join that has the same information in it, has that same 11-digit number. You might remember when we looked at merged tracts, it's an 11-digit number, but it's actually a text field, so it's acting like text. One way to look at this is it's right aligned. Those numbers in GeoID2 2 are aligned with the right-hand side, telling us it's a number. We want it to be a text field. So what we can do is insert a field and just copy those values over into a text field, and it will do what we need it to do. Unfortunately, we can't do that with a CSV file. First, we have to export it. Oh, what a pain. So I'm clicking over here where these 3 lines are, and I'm going to say export. Now this is going to take the census tract data table and export it as a generic file format. Now when I export this table, I'm going to tell it to send it to the location where I want to send my data, which is the Lab2C folder in my case. So make sure that you pick a location that you intend to send it, and make sure to send it not to a geodatabase, but just to a generic file folder. So here I'm going to my 2C folder, and it just wants to know the name of the folder I'm sending it to. And then the name here will be, I'll call it tract demography. This step right here does not show up explicitly in your instructions, by the way. This may or may not happen to you. In my case, when I open this file from Excel, it's numeric, and I need it to be text. And so I'm going to export this table as this new table, tract demography, which is a database file. It is a file that ARC can work with, and you'll notice this add option is available to me. And so what I'm going to do is add a field down here at the bottom. I'll call it new GeoID, and I'll make sure that that field is a text field. And then if I exit this, it'll prompt me to save the changes, and when I look at my new data table over on the right hand side, I'll see new GeoID. And all I need to do is right click on that, say calculate field, and I'm going to say new GeoID equals the old one. It equals GeoID2. You see that gets populated in this new GeoID equals GeoID2. And all that's doing is taking those numbers and copying them over. But you'll notice that in this case they are aligned on the left-hand side, meaning these are being read as text. That will enable me then to do the actual join. Now the way a merge operation works is, and here I'm just going to leave the attribute table for the merged tracks open. Think of it this way. I'm trying to add data to the merged tracks shapefile so that I can map it. And so in this case, I'm going to start the join with the shapefile. So I'm right-clicking on merged tracks, and I'm saying joins and relates, add join. And now you can see I'm going to look for that 11-digit tract ID number. That's this column here from the track shapefile, which is CTIDFPOO. And then I'm going to go over to the data table that I just exported called tract demography and find new GeoID way over here at the end. So what I'm doing is I'm telling the program which field to use as the key field, the fields that we're matching up. And what's going to happen is if a field matches, if a cell matches, it will take the attributes from that row of the tract demography table and append it, join it to the track shapefile. So over here on the right-hand side of the track shapefile, I'm going to see all of the attributes from track demography show up. So when I say OK, what I should see happen here in the attribute table is a bunch of demographic information appears. So over here on the right-hand side, I'm seeing for every row the demographic information, the total population, among other things, for each of those tracks. That means I can take this and symbolize it. So now, when I go to symbology, I can use a unique symbol, or a graduated color, and use, where did it go? Symbology keeps disappearing on me, and use the total population to show what the total population of all of these areas is. Something looks weird. Let's not worry about that. But those are the basic steps for taking a data table, modifying it, opening it up in ARC, modifying it again, and joining it to a track shapefile, or a shapefile. In this case, it was tracks.